This Unitarian Universalist congregation, we affirm no matter who you are, who you love, or where you are on your journey, you are welcome here. For those of you joining us online, we're glad you're with us, and we got our audio working, so we're glad that we can share this time with you. I am the Reverend Dr. Beth Johnson. My pronouns are she, they, and I'm pleased to be with you as the worship associate for this service. I'm so excited to be sharing the service with Anita Jenks, one of our worship associates and also extraordinary member of our congregation, and Tracy Olson will be joining us as well. I am joined today by Jamie Passman, our music director, by the Celebration Singers, directed by Julia Beckerman, and accompanied today by the amazing Carolyn May. So we've got a beautiful service planned for you today. If you're visiting with us, we'd invite you to sign our visitor's book back in the library. And members and friends, remember to wear your name tag, and if it's comfortable for you, to make sure that you wear your pronoun stickers. If you need a new name tag, you can request one in the living room. Childcare for children under the age of 5 is available in our playroom located the lower level of our RE office building right across the way. And youngsters are welcome to join the play group when older children are sung out to their classes. But know, too, that all ages are welcome to remain in the service. All voices are welcome here. You're invited to stay after the service for coffee downstairs in the social hall, and you're invited to pick up a green mug so that we know how to welcome you and to get to know you better. And as I like to remind folks, if you happen to be an introvert like me, believe it or not, you don't have to take a green mug. You can just kind of take a mug and stand around, and people might gravitate to you anyway because of your magnetic personality. May you know that each and every one is welcome in this house of peace. May our worship and our fellowship this morning touch your heart, your mind, and your spirit. Welcome to the celebration of community. There's always a lot going on around church, which is a very good thing. You can read all about it in News and Notes, which is our weekly newsletter that shows up in your inbox every Friday. There are printed copies available downstairs. And if you would like to receive News and Notes, just stop by the welcome table and they'll go ahead and sign you up. Invitation to join the Living Well and Planning Ahead group, who are inaugurating a new program beginning today. It'll happen in the living room after the service, I think after we have refreshments, then people gather in the living room. And the service is actually inspired by their work. So I'm very excited about it and grateful for all of the folks from our wise elders who have done so much to bring this kind of consciousness. I just want to remind you, after we had our climate justice revival, that there'll be an event on Zoom this Wednesday, Unitarian Universalist Theological Grounding for climate justice. And that's with the president of the denomination, the Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt, and the Reverend Mary Catherine Morn. So the other reminder, and this will go out in News and Notes when I remember to put it in, some of you may have done the transgender inclusion course in the last fall. Who did that? Raise your hands high if you did it. Okay, yeah, we've got a few folks here who did it. Well, it's being held again in DuPage UU Church in Naperville is sponsoring it again, and we are invited to join. This time it's all online. It is Thursdays one Thursday in October, 3 in November, and then 2 in December, and it's from 6:30 to 7:30. So this course is for individuals and groups, congregational teams who want to take their knowledge and skills to the next level in terms of trans identity and how to create congregations that are fully inclusive and affirming to the breadth of gender diversity. So we hope that you will sign up. If you need a way to sign up, you can see me or Carol Peterson, who heads our LGBTQIA welcoming team. You can see either of us after the service, and we'll send out something that will have the RSVP with that. Okay, how does that sound? That's a lot, isn't it? And there's a lot of other things that we can't all say at all. But I am thrilled today to be joined by Michaela Smith from Planned Parenthood, who are our plate share for this month. And I'm very excited to meet Michaela and to have Michaela share with the congregation. So come on up and let us know all about Planned Parenthood and how we can help. You got
this. All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Oh, I'm not used to that.
Yeah. Good morning.
Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Michaela Smith. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a major gift officer for Planned Parenthood of Illinois. I'm with our fundraising team, and I'm just so happy to be here. I promise not to take up too much time. Excuse me, my allergies, fall season, so apologies ahead of time, but I will go ahead and get started. Let's see. Oh yeah, and there's my information. And I'll also have this slide at the end, so if you have any questions or would like any follow-up for anything or like to volunteer for anything, I'll also have my email at the end, and I'll stick around for coffee as well, so to share that information as well. So, just as a quick, brief overview, I won't go too deep into this slide. It's just our overview of our mission and vision. Planned Parenthood in general is dedicated, again, to just equitable and fair and affordable, high-quality health care for all, particularly focused on reproductive health and gender-affirming care as well. Since starting way back when in the 1916. We do have a little bit of a history that we are not ashamed of or shy away from. Our founder, Margaret Sanger, she was really great in many ways. For those who don't know the history, and again, I won't go deep into it, but she was really great in many ways with starting an organization focused on women's health care and access to birth control and studying what hadn't been studied before. Unfortunately, and this is on our website too, she also had some very problematic, we'll just say, views as far as when it came to people of color and experimenting on them, and it was not great nor fun. I can proudly say that well over the years, and especially up into today, we're far away from that. We thank her for starting it, but we don't have the same views anymore, clearly. So we, as an organization, especially our parent organization, Planned Parenthood Federation of America, we are so diverse in not only our staff and our health providers, but also in the communities in which we serve. In Illinois specifically, we have quite a few health centers up and down the state, and for those who are very familiar, I grew up in Central Illinois. It's quite the difference south of I-80 to Chicago, as people from south of I-80 would love to tell you. And so we try to very much focus on care for all types of communities and incomes and everyone, basically. So just to go in a little bit further detail about it, as you can see, we have two primary arms of the organization. Our typical 501c3, which is your typical non-for-profit charity, tax deductible, and focused primarily on healthcare and education. And then we identify that one with blue, so we call it Care Blue logo. So if you see that, know that's our C3 tax deductible. The pink, which we also see especially this year in an election year, is our C4. So that is the political arm of our organization. So if you ever see that, for example, we had an event for the DNC that was in Chicago a few months ago. We also just had a fundraiser this past Thursday for our C4 arm. And again, that work primarily focuses on helping to connect and elect folks who align with our mission and values and who support people like you and people in our communities when it comes to healthcare and equitable rights and things like that. So just very brief overview. I'm here representing the C3 side. If you do have questions about C4, including, I always love to brag about our Springfield Lobby Days that I would highly recommend volunteering for. That's usually in the springtime when our state legislation is in session. You get to actually meet We help do a kind of intro class into a lot of the bills that are being passed or not passed, who's for them or against them, and then we kind of give you these like cards, and that you get to meet with our representatives for the state and advocate and say, hey, why are you not voting for this? Or, hey, we really appreciate you voting for this. And it's a really awesome opportunity to really get hands deep into that kind of work. So if you would like information about that, definitely connect with me after the service. Okay, so, excuse me. So as you can see, and sorry, it's a little small, we currently have technically 18 health centers. I say technically because just a few weeks ago, we unfortunately have to close down for a while our Wicker Park Health Center. It's nothing too bad. It was just unfortunately some leasing, rental things, and the property manager was not great, and it's very unfortunate. But we're in the works of trying to open up another health center, and I won't say too much, but in a region where we currently don't have one, where we definitely need one, that's gonna be further up north, particularly, I'll say tentatively, maybe the Rockfordish area, but you didn't hear that from me. So, so more to come on that. So technically right now we have 17, but we just opened up 2 brand new health centers. Our first one, our most recent one being in Carbondale, Illinois. I was just there last week actually, visiting our health center there and meeting with quite a few folks from the Unitarian Church in Carbondale, and they were amazing, and they do a lot of great work with us and for us in that community. So Carbondale opened, we had our soft open in December, and they officially opened in January. They are, as of right now, our busiest health center throughout the entire state. And we'll get into probably, as I can assume you probably know why that is in a second. But the health center that I used to go to and still will go to occasionally is the Aurora Health Center. A lot of folks in this area utilize that health center for everything under the sun. Birth control, testings, cancer screenings, things of that nature. So we're very proud, and we're still growing. That bottom picture on the bottom right is actually a picture from the Carbondale Health Center, where our president and CEO, Jennifer Welch, came to speak to some donors. We will have occasional events where folks get to come in and tour the health centers throughout the state. So whenever that pops up, I would highly recommend, because it's really cool to see all the work that we're doing. And like I said, this is just a brief summary of some of the services that we offer, because sometimes folks think we just focus on the big A1, right? But our top 2 services that we provide across the board are honestly STI testings and birth control. So we do have an amazing variety of different services. One of the programs that we're most proud of, especially right now, is our gender hormone affirming therapy, our GAP program. And that's been a really, really great program and fund that we're really proud of. We're also currently working on a lot of Black maternal health care initiatives and partnering with a lot of folks in the, particularly on the south side and on the west side, as well as downstate as well. So we offer a lot of different things that we don't talk about, especially in men's health. I love to talk about, especially, it's like we do that too. So if you need any information. So there's a lot of things that we do offer and cater to. Some health centers do some things, including more of the procedural care than others, and those are listed on our website as well. But for the most part, you can get everything done at most of our health centers. So this map, I know may be a little hard to see, but I want to really emphasize this because this is something that I, especially when I was just in Carbondale, has been very top of mind this past 2 years, basically. Since the fall of Roe, we have seen patients from, and actually that number is slightly wrong now, it's currently 47, but we have seen patients from 47 states in the US. Now, just to clarify, in full transparency, in some of those spaces, so in those light blue states like a California or New York or Washington State, abortion care is protected. And so there's no restrictive bans, right? So some of those folks are in the double digits, let's say 20, 30, and those are usually students, and especially closer to our health centers in campus towns like Champaign or Carbondale, or especially in Chicago in the Loop. And so that's where that number is figuring in, and that's not uncommon. what the scary component is all of those dark gray shaded areas are where we have the most restrictive and/or outright bans. These are bans as of August. They do change, especially Wisconsin and Indiana keeps flipping occasionally, but for the most part, we're seeing an incredible increase from folks all the way as far as Texas. And actually, when I was in Carbondale just last Saturday, we had our donor event and at the health center, and we had to start just a little bit late because our health center manager informed us that she was seeing a patient and it was taking a little longer, and that she came all the way from Texas, and they, of course, didn't want to reschedule. And that was the third patient in 3 days that they've seen from Texas in Carbondale. And so that's just pretty much on average. They mostly see folks from Tennessee, Kentucky, Texas, and Indiana, of course, and Florida as well. So it's pretty terrifying, but it spoke so much into how proud I am of the organization, because they never turn away a patient. There have been times where they usually close, let's say 5 o'clock, and they have stayed open until 7 to make sure that those folks are getting the care that they need, especially those who've come from such a long way. The thing I do want to talk, and I'll wrap it up here pretty soon, but the one thing people ask, what are the 2 things that we can do, that anyone can do right now? The biggest one is we do have, the short term is our emergency travel fund. And so, excuse me, for example, my team, we're in charge of raising X amount of dollars a year. We've exceeded that last year, and yet we were still in the negative, partly because we have now created this emergency travel fund since the fall of Roe, where we help subsidize and/or completely take care of the hotel and travel for these patients coming from out of state. So gas cards, childcare even, hotel stays, Ubers, all of those things. A lot of folks will help us, including actually one of the Unitarian churches in Southern Illinois, will donate Subway gift cards, food cards, DoorDash, things like that. And that is such a huge help right now, because our Carbondale, like I said, since opening, it's been our busiest, and every day they've had a booked appointment all day, every day since it's opened in January. So that is the one thing. If you'd like to know more about that, definitely can tell you more after the fact. But yeah, so just wanted to show that. Now on the good news, and this is just further showing, again, a lot of the barriers that patients have to face that we are constantly making sure that we try to eliminate. Again, abortion bans don't prevent abortions. All they do is prevent equitable and safe health care for folks. So we try to eliminate any of those barriers for those patients. Excuse me. Now again, not to end on doom and gloom, because we do have a lot of grateful patients, right? And so again, it's a little hard to see, but these are some amazing quotes from patients that we get on a regular basis. Part of the reason we do see so many folks from out of state, especially from Texas and all those super southern states, is because they will tell their friends and say, I received amazing care from these health centers. So a lot of them will come just even for birth control because they're too afraid to get them in the banned states that they currently live in. So, so it's not just these big procedures, right? They're coming in just for cancer screenings, STI testings, things like that. So we are always very thankful for our healthcare providers. They are the true heroes, truly, and they're amazing. And some of the folks in these pictures, in the top right, that's from a Pride Parade, and that is our public policy team, who are in charge of a lot of those. They just did a statewide Pride tour from Danville to Aurora to Carbondale to Champaign. And then in the bottom left is my colleague Jess. They are stationed in Champaign and work in community engagement. And in that middle is from an event from the DNC, and those are some of our board members for our C4 side of the house. So yeah, so a lot of great fun. Lastly, these are just some of our social media pages if you want to follow and stay up to date with some of the amazing activities and opportunities that we host throughout the state all year round, especially this year of all years. I am very tired, but it's been a lot of fun. It's been really great. Those QR codes, if you are wanting to volunteer, that is a huge help as well. We are always looking for escorts, patient escorts to our health centers. Our Surprisingly enough, our most protested health center is the Aurora Health Center, so not even the Carbon. When I went to Carbondale, I was really nervous, and the Aurora, and there was like one person out there who was just chilling, you know, but in Aurora, it's always the most active, we'll say. So if you would love to volunteer, we always need that. If you would love to join some of our boards or engagement committees, definitely scan and learn more. And then the other QR code is, again, if you'd like to support or know someone who would love to give in any capacity, that's the other QR code as well. Oh, and that's it. So my information is there, and I'll be around after service to hang out with you guys. So thank you so much. I really appreciate
I'm looking forward to us joining in as robust a way as our Carbondale sister church does with Planned Parenthood of Illinois. So thank you so much, Michaela, for giving us that information. I think sometimes we have an idea what we know, but this drilled down to some things that I think we maybe just don't really actually know. So thank you for that. And if you need the QR codes, you can see Michaela, you can see me. And just know that as Unitarian Universalists, we have been on the forefront of reproductive justice for decades. So thanks for that. And take a breath with me as we just acknowledge that we here in the western suburbs inhabit areas that are the traditional territories of the indigenous peoples, including the Kickapoo, Peoria, Potawatomi, and others. As people trying to live into a more just world, we have a responsibility to acknowledge the history and legacy of colonialism everywhere and the harm done to Native peoples, indigenous peoples everywhere, and to work to repair that harm. One of the ways that we can do that is by recognizing that tomorrow is actually Indigenous Peoples Day, formerly called Columbus Day. I invite you to get to know the indigenous folks in our area and also any other places where you can support indigenous causes. I've been involved with the Apache Stronghold, who are trying to save their sacred land in Oak Flat, Arizona. That is Dr. Wensley Nosey, who was at the Supreme Court in September trying to get the Supreme Court to save Oak Flat, which had been preserved but then was given away through one of those bills or measures that John McCain snuck in, and Resolution Copper, an international company, is now planning to mine, so you can support the Apache Stronghold as well. There we are. I was there, but I was not in that picture with the Reverend Dr. William J. Barber, John, who's passed, and Dr. Nosey. So look for the places where we can acknowledge the conditions and the circumstances for our indigenous siblings, near and far. And so we begin our service taking another breath, gathering in as we sing to bring us into this space of welcome, of hope, and of peace. I invite you to rise in body or spirit and sing with me.
Others
Come, listen, come, listen. Let us listen with our ears. Do you hear it? The voice, so familiar yet far. Listen with our hearts, the voice familiar and still far. Less a longing and more a knowing, a whisper of something inside that seems to have known us for longer than we have known it. Come, let us listen together.
Through this flame of life, let us seek to remember the wholeness of our lives. The weaving of light and shadows of our life in this great, astonishing dance in which we move every day.
The seasons of our lives in the service called Timeless Aging. We have a time, Pam, for all ages.
Thanks for the snazzy music.
Thanks for the chorus.
Oh, yeah, you betcha. All right, this story I'm going to share with you today is a very sweet one about the relationships between all ages. And it's called Miss Tizzy by Libba Moore Gray. Oops. Miss Tizzy always wore a purple hat, with a white flower in it and high-top green tennis shoes. The neighbors thought her peculiar, but the children loved her. Miss Tizzy's house was pink and sat like a fat blossom in the middle of the street with white houses, white fences, and very neat flower gardens. Miss Tizzy had no fence at all, but she had flowers that grew everywhere and spilled over onto the sidewalks. Miss Tizzy let the children pick her flowers. Then she gave them clean glass jelly jars to put them in, and the children loved it. Miss Tizzy's big yellow cat, Hiram, slept in the window box in the middle of some red geraniums. Sometimes he climbed on her shoulders and hung there like a tired old fur piece. On Mondays, Miss Tizzy baked cookies. She let the neighborhood children put in the raisins and then lick the bowl while the cookies were baking. And the children. On Tuesdays, Miss Tizzy made puppets out of old socks. She made a puppet for each boy and girl. They made up their own stories and put on shows for Miss Tizzy. She laughed and clapped every time. And the children. On Wednesdays, Miss Tizzy played her bagpipes. She gave the children spoons and pans and let them pretend they were playing real drums. Each Wednesday, one child got to be special and play a silver penny whistle. Every child got a turn. They marched up and down the street with Miss Tizzy and her bagpipes leading the parade. Hiram sometimes marched along, and the children. On Thursdays, Miss Tizzy gave the children clean white paper and crayons. They drew pictures of sunshine and butterflies. They put them in Miss Tizzy's red wagon and delivered them all over town to people who had stopped smiling and had grown too tired to come out of their houses anymore. Hiram rode in the front of the wagon with a red ribbon around his neck, and the children. On Fridays, Miss Tizzy opened her trunk and they all played dress up. There were hats and feathers and hats with bows. There were baseball caps and straw hats and bright red bands. Everyone wore a hat. Miss Tizzy put on a lace shawl and served pink lemonade in her best china cups, and the children. On Saturdays, Miss Tizzy put on her roller skates and went up and down the sidewalks. The children came out of their white houses and joined her. They made a roller skate train holding on to Miss Tizzy's long skirt. Hiram was usually the caboose. The children made train sounds and Miss Tizzy was the engineer. She never scolded the children for being too loud, and they loved it. On Sundays, when the day was over, the children stretched out on bright quilts in Miss Tizzy's backyard and looked up at the stars. The tree frogs croaked their summer sounds as Miss Tizzy sang songs about the moon. Slightly off key, by the way. But the children didn't care. One day, Miss Tizzy took off her purple hat with the white flower and laid it on the window seat. Then she got off her high-top green tennis shoes and placed them under her high white bed. Miss Tizzy lay down on her feather mattress. She was very sick. Hiram left his window box and curled up at her feet. He did not purr anymore. The doctor came and went. He shook his head and looked very serious. The children did not love it. They were sad. They didn't know what to do because they missed their grown-up friend. But they had an idea. On Monday, They baked cookies with raisins and brought them to the pink house. On Tuesday, they stood under the window and held up puppets. They put on a puppet show just for Miss Tizzy. On Wednesday, they brought pans and spoons and played a soft little drumming sound just outside the door. And on Thursday, they drew pictures with orange and red crayons and put them in Miss Tizzy's mailbox. On Friday, they put on funny hats and left a tea tray at the front door. They left Hiram a bowl of cool milk. And on Saturday, they put a brand new pair of roller skates in a big box with a purple ribbon on top and took them to Miss Tizzy. On Sunday, when the sun went away, the children stood underneath Miss Tizzy's window. They sang all the moon songs she had taught them. Miss Tizzy's hat glowed in the moonlight. She was having a perfect, peaceful dream. She heard the children singing, and she loved it. All right, and now you will sing, me and Penny, and anybody else that would like to come to the other building.
Tender this business of being human, being in community, allowing our hearts and our souls and our spirits to be touched by stories that might not be ours, but are ours on some level and in some way. As we consider the journey of our lives. She's not here to hear it, but I'm so grateful to Pam Footer for her spirit. And when we read the books that we're going to share on Sundays, and we stand in her office and cry. We know that our financial contributions to this congregation come from sacrifice and hard work, and come from joy, and come from possibility, and come from love, right? We're so grateful for this and commit to ensure that the funds that we gather collectively do a greater good, not only for our congregation and our world, but for the plate shares that we have, that we heard this important history of Planned Parenthood and the work that they're doing. So we're pleased to be sharing our collection. All the funds that we get today in this service will be for Planned Parenthood of Illinois. And as a reminder, you can go online and donate to them all month long. Just go online and find the donate button, and then you can, that donation will go to Planned Parenthood. So may we give and live in love and in hope. Please join in our offertory words. This church is made up of all of us. It is what we learn together, the work we do together, the fun we have together. It is what we share with one another, with the people around us, and with all the world. Jeannie. Breathe. Yeah. Okay, did you need to do that? Do you want to do that again? Just take a breath with me. We've heard words and sung songs and had ideas and all the feels, and I just invite you to be with what is for a moment and just take a breath. Breathing into that place in your body that you know is your center, and allow it to bring you into the place of knowing, into the place of connection with the holy within, through, and among us. Breathing in, knowing that you, yourself, and everything is holy now. As we anticipate singing Spirit of Life, I just invite you as we sing to feel your roots and to feel your wings and allow them to bring you into that place of knowing what it is that you brought with you today, your joys or your sorrows, your hopes, your despairs. And just go ahead and sing with me, will you? Sing that song, we are inviting our awareness of the Spirit of life. When we sing, "Come to me," I think we're singing, "Let me be aware of all that it is and your Spirit with us." Beloveds, if you have a joy or a sorrow, something that is weighing on your heart or giving wings to your spirit, you can come forward and drop a pebble. Each one is unique, signifying the uniqueness that you each are. I want to remind you that pebbles can be dropped in silence, and they are still held in the warmth of our community. And just go ahead if you have a joy or a sorrow and share with us briefly.
Hi, I'm Susan. Actually, first I want to share a joy with Michaela. I visited the Planned Parenthood in Columbia, Missouri when I was a graduate student, which was a very, very long time ago. So it's a deep affection for that place. I want to share a joy. Last Sunday, I got to attend the wedding of a young man who grew up in this church, Slater Stillman. Linda Rio was the officiant for the service. She was awesome, and it was just a beautiful, joyful day for the entire Stillman family, and I was honored to be part of it.
Hi, I'm Lisa. Yesterday, my cousin was in a horrific car accident, and he's pretty broken, lots and lots of broken bones, but clean brakes, and he's stable, so he made it through the night. Amen to that, so please keep him in your thoughts.
What's his name?
Steve, my cousin Steve. He's like a second brother to me, so.
I'm Charlie. My maternal grandpa died 52 years ago yesterday, and it was probably the most crucible moment in my then 10 years and 27 days. As pertains to this church, That evening, John Nichols, the minister at the time, was right there in our home. He spent independent time with each of us and helped us on our way to, I really think, a structured recovery. And also as pertains to this church, that my mother went on to participate in a grief program which ever enriched her, even as we were cleaning out her house, remembering things and people in this church that were part of that. So that's what I'm thinking.
Hi, I'm Rich. I'd like to remember Tom Duda, who recently passed away, longtime boyfriend of my mom. He was a father, a grandfather, friend to all, and I want to give joy for all the love that he shared with people over the course of his life.
I'm Ron, and my wife and I have been, Norma, have been friends with the Unitarian Church in Asheville, North Carolina over these many years, a very friendly church. And we've remained in contact with that church, and just recently they invited in the community those that needed help and support into their church to celebrate life.
Good morning, I'm Sarah. For those of you I don't know, I'm an OBGYN at Loyola, and I wanted to share a joy that after 16 years of working at Loyola, I accepted a position at University of Chicago as their Vice Chair of Education. I'm very excited, and I'm thankful for what Loyola has given to me to give me the ability to be qualified for this role, but I'm also incredibly happy to be able to give a full scope of reproductive care to my patients on the south side of Chicago. And I want to thank Michaela for being here. I want to amplify the message that she brought here, which is we really as a community need to surround these people who need the care that Planned Parenthood is providing. So thanks.
Good morning, I'm Kathy Fulser. I have two joys to share. I have 7 nieces, Jane and Dave's 7 granddaughters. Not one, but 2 of them just got engaged. One about a month ago and one yesterday. And so we're very excited about that. Unless you think we've reduced the women in our family to their marital status, I want to just tell you a little bit about each one of them. My sister Liz's daughter Emma went to Harvard Law School and just got a job in the State Department. And my brother's daughter, Alban, finished her PhD in clinical psychology at the University of Texas and now is in private practice in Atlanta and also works in the PTSD clinic at the VA. So yes, they're doing it. So they are continuing Jane and Dave's legacy of having a social conscience and acting upon it and doing good works. Thanks.
Yes. Thank you. We're not going back. For all those joys and sorrows, those spoken and unspoken, will you hold with me a moment of silent reflection? Spirit of life, Spirit of love, Holy One moving in, through, and among us, we pause before the next thing, holding all that we've heard and all that we know is held, for those near and those far, for those honoring losses, beloved ones who leave a legacy of love and joy and hope and possibility, for those celebrations that add such depth and dimension and joy to lives, we give thanks. For all who are suffering under the rubble, all who are suffering from war, all who are suffering from deprivation, we pause, remembering that we are part of the interdependent web of all existence, connecting us each to each here and each to each throughout this world. And you, each of you, know this. You are always and everywhere held in love and mystery deeper than you can know. as we weave together a life of connection, a tapestry of love.
And life goes on. It does. I hope I'm not too distracted today. Our 62-year-old daughter is at this moment running the marathon. So my mind is in two places. Good luck, Val. I'm going to read a poem. Dear. It's written by Rupi Kaur. If you haven't found her, I found her and shared it with Reverend Beth, and she is someone to look up. Rupi Kaur, K-A-U-R. She is going to shake up the world of poetry, believe me. This is her poem that she wrote in her 20s. She is of East Indian heritage, but came to the United States early in her life. This is her poem, Timeless. They convinced me I only had a few good years left before I was replaced by a girl younger than me, as though men yield power with age. But women grow into irrelevance. They can keep their lies, for I have just started. I feel as though I just left the womb. My 20s are the warm-up for what I'm about to do. Wait till you see me in my 30s. Now that will be a proper introduction to the nasty, wild woman in me. How can I leave before the party has started? Rehearsals begin at 40. I ripen with age, and I do not come with an expiration date. And now, in the main event, curtains are up at 50. Let's begin the show. Look her up, she's good. In the 20th century, a poem, she talks about being dismissed, and she was dismissed because she wanted her first book published. She alludes to the experiences in her poem that we have had during the first part of life. In our 20s, we are discovering the freedom to make a life of our own. We are beginning to feel that we are, ready or not, becoming part of the adult world. It is a strange new feeling to be considered an adult, but the experience is intoxicating, and we begin to build our identity. Our climb up the mountain of years is just beginning, and throughout the ascent, we meet barriers. I call them fences. Fences that hinder our passage forward. It isn't until we find the open gates within the fences that we are confronted with taking the risk to pass through. And when we do, if we do, new paths and new perspectives open to us as well as new choices. Our lives become not just one beginning, but a series of new beginnings. New beginnings might include goal setting, collecting things, building families as well as careers, and as Carl Jung, the famous psychologist, points out, building our ego. It's a very busy life, a complicated life, and as she says in her poem, there is no expiration date right now. Death is not on the list of things to do. As we venture forth, our eyes begin to focus on the real show, she says. And that begins at 50, the second half of life. She is in the first half of her life. How many here are in the first half of life? Raise your hand. Okay. In our 50s and 60s, we find ourselves at a turning point. How many of you are in your 50s and 60s? How many of you are in your 70s? How many of you are in your 80s? How many of you are in your 90s? I'm in the 90s. I'll be 92 on Saturday. Our thoughts at this stage, and we honor all of us, we begin to think about the meaning of our lives, our thoughts about our inner life. Who am I? What is my identity now that I am retired? Where am I in my new aloneness? And what do I do without my identity and the job? I remember a friend of ours had retired. He was a scientist, and he says, I'm no longer a scientist. But he was. He was still a scientist, even though he has retired. It is this stage of life when we go inward and examine the years we have earned. The younger and older years meld to become us. It is time when we must learn to let go of regrets, fears, conflicting relationships. These are the shadows in our lives. As you know, my family attends the Chautauqua Institution each summer. I attended a lecture by Father Richard Rohr, a Franciscan priest. My husband stayed back this particular lecture in the apartment to watch it on television, for he wasn't up to walking. I was curious to hear what a Catholic priest had to say about life, and I wondered how long I would be patient enough to sit through his quiet, intimate talk. I gave myself 15 minutes, and then I would leave if I wasn't happy. So I did. The minutes passed, then a half hour, then 45 minutes. I was mesmerized. I even stayed for the question and answer time, and over an hour had passed. Father Rohr spoke of the first half of life and how it prepares us for the second half of life. He said, we must learn laws, the expectations and the limitations in our early life. These guideposts are important to know if we are to know which of them can be broken in the second half of life, and which no longer are relevant in our present aging selves. He talked about how his loss of faith allowed him the freedom to move on, to live with life's ambiguities and contradictions. He felt he no longer needed to live with the all or nothing thinking, no longer needed to win, no longer needed to allow the shadows in his life. Then he leaned closer to the mic, and in a very quiet voice, he said to all of us, just let it go. Lastly, he said, he no longer needed to defend a reputation. It was then that he learned that he was part of humanity and just like anybody else. As I listened, I realized he was talking about his newfound faith, one that acknowledges the spirit of life, the life that we share, the stirrings of compassion, the roots that hold us close, and the winds that set us free. Indeed, he was free. Another Catholic I was introduced to at Chautauqua in other years was Sister Joan Chittister, who is a Benedictine nun from Erie, Pennsylvania. She is also co-chair of the Global Peace by Women connected to the UN organization. And as you might, because I'm reading from two Catholics, Chautauqua is very diverse. There are Jews, there are Unitarians, there are Protestants, there are atheists, there are agnostics. It's a wonderful mix of people. In her book, The Gift of Years, Sister Joan Chittister illuminates 40 human conditions that we experience in our lives, especially in later years. She talks about the burdens and the blessings of these conditions. I will mention only two of them, fear and regret in our later years. Two conditions that need to be addressed, especially at this stage of life, if we are to feel the wholeness in our lives. As we grow into these later years, it is part of the unknown that we may create fear of our destiny. Here is what she said about fears, burdens. The burden of fear is in the possibility of giving into fear's invisibility, of losing our sense of self and our human obligations. Fear tempts us to believe that life is over rather than empty, rather than simply changing. And she said the blessing of fear is that it invites us to become the fullness of ourselves. It comes to us in the nighttime of the soul to tell us to rise to new selves in fresh and exciting ways for our sake and, of course, for the sake of others and the world. In other words, we can use these later days for the good of others as well as for ourselves. Regarding regret, Sister Joan says, the burden of regret is that unless we come to understand the value of choices we have made in the past on our climb up the mountain, we may fail to see the gifts they have brought us. On the blessings of regret, she says, the blessing of regret is clear. It brings us, if we are willing to face it head on, to the point of being present to this new time of life in an entirely new way. It urges us to continue becoming. When we finally reach the summit of the mountain, the view is beautiful, but it is the journey of the ascent of years and the lessons we've learned along the way that will make us home and ready for our life's end. We are faced with the final destiny in the second half of life. We are aware that we have more years behind us than we have ahead of us. And this is a time of deep listening to ourselves, to our soul. It is time of solitude when we are alone with our inner thoughts and our many memories. It is a task of these later years to integrate what we learned in our exterior life and what we know in our inner life, our true selves. If we can embrace and forgive the flaws and mistakes and cherish the joys and love in our lives, we can know that compassion is for not only ourselves, but for others. Then our lives have been worth living. And when we can face ourselves honestly, knowing that we are neither perfect nor flawed, but whole, then dying is worth accepting. And in the words of a 16th century mystic, she says, in the end, if we can accept ourselves whole, all shall be well, all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. I just want to mention that we have 11 people in our congregation who are in their 90s. 30 years from now, they predict that this number will triple. So be prepared.
Very much. And thanks for your beautiful compliment as well, Carolyn. Dearly beloved, we have gathered here today to get through this thing called life. All right, some of you got it. Prince's words remind us of what this growing and aging all through the stages of life is about. Just pausing to recognize that not all people have the opportunity to age. Some lives are taken too soon by disease or violence or war. Some people don't have the time for the introspection, but are just struggling to get by. And that is why we work for a world where all have the opportunity to be held in the process of aging, why we have agencies and places that give folks the opportunity to be able to make this time, this passage through life, good and healthy and whole. William Blake's words remind us of the joys and sorrows of life, that they are woven fine, and we make our way weaving that tapestry of our lives in a myriad of colors, both bright and dark, deep. We weave the fabric of our souls. As we consider listening deeply to the processes of life, we journey through this thing called life, meted out in uncertain days. I'm just so deeply grateful to you, Anita, for your deep wisdom and the time we spent together planning this service. And when we were thinking about the service and what to call it, we called it the Soul's Journey. And then in relation to the poem, it was named Timeless Aging. And I asked Anita what image came to mind, and Anita, you closed your eyes and then said a mountain. And that's why mountains are woven through these slides. The first slide was the youngest mountain in the world, and in Anita's slides were the oldest mountains in the world. As I thought about, my words today, I thought about the images of the people who have inspired me. So I have some to share very briefly, and I was inspired by friends from a Facebook post who also named theirs. So I'm just going to name it. These are the sages. These are the elders. These are the ones who have given me life and have taught me how I want to live my life. The Reverend Dr. William J. Barber, Joanna Macy, Pema Chodron, Dolores Huerta, Jane Goodall, Ruby Sales, the Reverend Rebecca Quimeda Cienz, who's the first ordained UU woman minister of the UU Church in the Philippines, Jimmy Carter, Margaret Atwood, David Attenborough, Angela Davis, the Reverend Dr. Peggy Rowe, the Reverend Dr. Larry Ward, senior Dharma teachers, Gloria Steinem, the Reverend Bill Sinkford, former president of the UUA, pictured here speaking at a Planned Parenthood event in Portland where he was the minister, Arundhati Roy. I have to do this for my friend, the Reverend David Miller, Bruce Springsteen, and Dolly Parton. I invite you to call out the names of the people that have inspired you.
Duke Ellington.
Call them out. Call them out. Presente, eh? Let's pay attention to Maya Angelou, yes. See, this was an original slide, and I changed it to include people, only people who are still with us, but we have Maya Angelou. Who else do we have there? We have Pete Seeger. Anyways, beloveds, as we travel this journey, as we are privileged to have the opportunity to age, may we open our hearts to the wisdom that is there within ourselves and within one another. And now I am going to call up a very wise person, Tracy Olson, to talk with us about the program that's coming up.
Good morning. Thank you, Reverend Beth and Anita. That was beautiful. I'm here to talk to you about the new program we've put together, which is Living Well and Planning Ahead. And this comes from you, the congregation. Specifically, it comes from wise elder conversations about things we need to talk about, things we need to do, and it comes from the discussion group that Marion Honel Wilson had after her film about her parents' care. And it comes from the lead work we did as a congregation last year. So we have a big, long list, and I won't go through it all, but these are topics that we have addressed here at the church in the past and new ones. So I'm going to just mention a few, and they're not in any order, but it's how to be engaged in your later years, grief and loss, downsizing, wills and trusts, healthcare proxy, memorial area for our church. I'm single, how do I plan for my care? Senior housing choices, and making church gatherings more accessible. So we learn from these conversations that many of us are looking for spiritual and pastoral guidance for ourselves or a loved one's later years. We also are looking for practical and legal decision-making to prepare. What I heard from these groups is that we have some insecurity or we're unsure about the second half of life, either for ourselves or caring for someone. And it makes sense that we turn to the church for that, to the people we trust, and where we honor the mystery of life and our place in it. So we formed a team, took the list and organized it. In addition to the worship component, which you heard today, we will have a team project, after service conversations, some Zoom presentations, and 4 workshops this church year. We imagine that to get through the list, this will take 2 years, and we will look at what we've done after that 2 years and decide what needs to be an annual education component of the church. We will be drawing on the professional and lived experience of people here in the church. Now, the first workshop is October 27th after the service, and it is called Your Care Wishes. It will be led by Gemma Gunther. Gemma's a member here, and she's a graduate of Meadville Lombard and is a hospice chaplain. I know from my personal experience how important communicating your care wishes is to families. My mother had a living will and power of attorney documents. She updated these when she was 80, and she lived to be nearly 98. She was diagnosed with Alzheimer's at 91, and the last 3 years of her life, she was not able to communicate verbally. She had designated me as her power of attorney for health care. But I often second-guessed myself about her care and the choices I was making. But when this doubt set in, and it often did, I would review her living will. And she told me clearly what she wanted, if possible. So I was able to carry out her wishes because it was possible. But that piece of paper gave me such comfort. So my mom did a great job planning ahead. But there's one thing she didn't do. She didn't tell me what to do with her 300-piece fruit jar collection. So Dave and I are displaying these in our basement right now. So we're going to cover it all. in this living well and planning ahead, what to do with your fruit jars or anything else you may have collected. And we will start with a short conversation after this service, which will be led by Liz Reyes, who is the co-team leader of this endeavor. And as I mentioned, October 27th, Gemma will be here presenting your care wishes. Please sign up. And if you'd like to be on the team or a presenter, please tell Liz or me. We all know we can get all this information from other sources, but we are doing this as a community to be able to share our experiences and to make the experience a rich one. So join in, and there's a door prize at the conversation afterwards.
I'm so tempted to take a few because I love jars, and then I think about what that would do to my family. And just a reminder that this program is not just for people who consider themselves elders. If you are a person that's living, you will pass. If you are a person who's connected to other people, and I hope most of us are, you will maybe have the opportunity to journey with someone. So please, everyone is invited to this. I would just like to invite you to join me in our chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame. So this service is ended. We will end with our closing song will be the end of the service, and then we'll walk back and have some conversation and some coffee and meeting Michaela, and then gathering to live well and plan. Our service is ended, but our service to the world goes on. Invite you to rise in body or spirit and sing with us.
I think we're off YouTube. So if you're interested in the 11 people who are in their 90s, here they are.